PS2 remains the best-selling dedicated home video game console of all time, 155 million units sold worldwide. The chances are you probably played games on it at some point in your gaming life. But how to get the best possible PS2 experience today? PCSX2 PS2 emulator is a good choice, but if emulation isn't your cup of tea, how to get the best experience on the real thing? I'll show you two things in this video that will lead to a mind-blowing experience. Buckle up and let's elevate our PS2 experience through the roof. Let's take a look at the video scalers, what they are and why you need one. This only applies to you if you want to play a real PlayStation 2 or any old system on your modern TV that is not CRT, one of those big, huge and heavy things from the past. I'd even say that the PS2 is still best enjoyed on one of those because of how PS2 is rendering the games and outputting the image. But I totally understand if you don't want to have a CRT TV anymore, and even if you do use a CRT TV, I recommend using component cables or RGB SCART over those composite video cables that your system ships with. Seriously, just bin them already. Yeah, the SCART adapter too, that doesn't make it RGB. On which one do you prefer to play your PS2 on? CRT or modern TV? Let me know in the comments. Why do you need a scaler? And a good one. PS2 outputs a 480i signal in NTSC countries. That is an interlaced video. In the modern day of high definition video and sample and hold nature of TVs, this signal isn't handled by most TVs very well, resulting in comping artifacts by the port deinterlacing process. TV also has to upscale the image to your TV's fixed resolution, and they generally do a port job. This process also introduces extra input lag, making your games harder and less responsive for no good reason, when PS2 on CRT has zero input lag caused by the display. The latest TVs probably don't even have proper connections anymore to hook up your PS2 to it. A good quality retro gaming video scaler adds minimal input lag and handles the deinterlacing and upscaling process properly. And Mike G's Retrotink 5X Pro is the best option. Well, his new Retrotink 4K is even better, but the more affordable 5X Pro model will do the job just fine. There are even cheaper devices available, like this one. Then why buy something expensive like Retrotink 5X Pro when dirt cheap options are available? That's because these cheap options don't handle 240p signals properly. Just like your TV, they mishandle it as 480i. It's not a big issue with PS2, but with anything older it really is. And even some PS2 games output 240p, like iGo for example. These cheap devices like the one I have here, that I used for a long time before Retrotink 5X Professional came out, don't represent colors correctly. At least this one doesn't. They appear muddy and oversaturated. It doesn't have proper aspect ratio controls, which may or may not be a problem, but it was very annoying to always correct the aspect ratio for a video because this outputs 4:3 images in stretched widescreen format. The one plus side of these cheap devices is that if you play something that switches resolutions between 240p and 480i constantly, like Dino Crisis, the picture doesn't drop out because the scaler considers it 480i the whole time. Retrotink 5X Pro on the other hand handles this resolution change correctly. It displays 240p and 480i properly and the signal doesn't drop out when the game switches between them. If you want to get best possible output from your real PS2 to your modern TV, you just need a good video scaler and preferably high quality cables, but these cheap cables work fine too. There are also PS2 digital HDMI mods out there these days, which is great option for the PS2 itself, but I'd still buy a scaler instead, even if it's more money, because you can hook all your devices to it. Yes, other devices than just video game consoles, VCRs, DVD players, etc. But if you want the best picture possible on a modern TV just out of the PS2, then HDMI mod might be something to look at. What about that other thing I mentioned at the beginning of the video? Of course, it's about the SSD upgrade for your PS2. Before we continue in this video, I used the original fat model of PS2. You can make this work with slim models, but it requires a hardware mod. And there are ODE or optical disc emulator solutions coming for the PS2. I just like the good old hard drive or SSD and the free McBoot method because it's cheap and doesn't require any hardware mods. Things you need for this. First of all, you'll need a fat PS2 and the third-party network adapter that converts the SATA connection of 2.5-inch SSD to the IDE that PS2 can use. This means you cannot use official Sony one from the back in the day. Of course, if you just want to use an IDE device, then it's fine. I had to remove the shield from mine to make it work on this particular hard drive because the connector didn't have exactly the correct separation of the IDE and power connectors. Fortunately, these third-party ones are affordable and readily available. This one is branded GameStar? GameStar? Even they can't get their brand written the same way twice, so why should we care about that? But in the end, it's just cheap product from China. But it works fine and hasn't destroyed my console. Obviously, you'll need an SSD. Yeah, I just let the SSD flap around like that. It's fine as long as you don't move around your system while it's on. At least it's fine with these lightweight SSDs. These old, now broken Kingston drives are heavy enough that I wouldn't do this with these. As you can see, they are twice as heavy. And these very affordable ADATA drives are even lighter than the Samsung ones. It seems you are still here. I'd appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel for more content like this. Thank you. The final thing you'll need is an installation of free McBoot or free memory card boot and the Open PS2 Loader on any old PS2 memory card, so the system can boot from it. There are two ways to obtain this. You can install it yourself on any PS2 memory card or just buy a memory card that has it pre-installed. I'll leave the links in the description. Even though it's not hard to install, I'll just recommend buying one pre-installed. It usually doesn't even cost any extra to have it pre-installed. If it does, don't buy it. They also usually include other apps on them as well that can be utilized, for example to move saves between real console and emulator. And if you one day don't want to use it anymore, just reformat the card and use it for saving game data. I have bought 3 of these pre-installed. This is my latest one with this label. Too bad it's pretty much impossible to find it on genuine Sony 8MB card anymore. So if you want to have it one of these, you probably have to install it yourself. These large third-party 64MB cards aren't as reliable as the Sony ones and are just a hair thicker, and it feels just wrong to cram them into the tight slots of the PS2. When you have all the things required, you just boot up the console with the free McBoot inserted into either memory card slot. I use slot 2, so I don't have to pull it out and put it back in every time I reset the console. Games usually search save files from slot 1. Then you just launch Open PS2 Loader from the menu, select the source as IDE and launch your game. Simple as that. You might be thinking that getting the games on the SSD is just as simple as connecting the SSD to your computer and dragging the files over. Unfortunately no, it's not that simple, but it's not very complicated either. You'll just need the right tool for the job, and that's called WinHIIP. That's short for Windows HDL Image Install Program. And yes, you need to run this program as an administrator for it to work properly. Select the drive you want to use. Make sure to select the correct drive. This will delete all files on it. It doesn't say PS2 here if you haven't done this before. Then select Format Drive. From the application drop-down menu, select 48-bit for larger than 128GB drives. 128GB and smaller drives select 28-bit. I'll cancel this because I don't want to format my drive because it already has games on it. Now you are ready to add some games. Push Add Images and Image Files, and once again add images. You can add multiple images simultaneously, but I recommend doing it one at a time, especially if you want to change the name that will appear Open PS2 Loader menu when you select what game you want to play. You can rename them later, but I just prefer to do it here. Then just hit start and your game will be copied to the SSD. exit the program and you are done. As you can see, you can make a PS2 look nice and a modern TV, and with an SSD make your PS2 less heavy and quieter. With SSD the only noise comes out of the fan at the back, and you can even replace that with the quieter one if you so desire. Maybe what you saw in this video is not worth it to you to play old games and emulation is more of your thing. I made a video about it. Watch it next.